Briefly, I'm a leadership and a life coach. I graduated from the business school in 1984. And often with my clients, I talk to them about personal vision and how that personal vision can help them through times of change and chaos. And it was something that I wish I would have known earlier in my life. And it was one of the things that I learned right out of graduate school. I was able to study with a psychologist named William Bridges, and I was able to train with him. And he has a book called Transitions. So a lot of the material that I'll be talking to you about today comes from his book. The book is called Transitions by William Bridges. And there's 4 questions that we're going to explore today. One is, what is change and how is it different from transition? What's the human response to change? And how can your personal vision help you through change and chaos in your life? And what's an effective vision statement for yourself? So we're going to explore those 4 questions in the next hour. And there's going to be 2 breakouts. So I'm hoping that you don't step away and you'll be able to take part in the 2 breakouts. So let's start with what is change. Think of change as an event. And change can be both a positive event or a negative event. Let me give you a few examples. Moving to a new town, the death of a family member, going to a new school, starting a new job. So change is an event. It's often triggered external to you. That's the important thing to remember. Transition happens after the change. And transition is a process. And the transition process has 3 pieces. There's an ending, there's a period of neutral zone, which is around, that's where the chaos comes in. And then there's something called the new beginning. And that's where your personal vision becomes very important. So transition is a process. It has 3 phases. Endings, often associated with something that you're losing. A neutral zone, that's where the chaos comes in. And then new beginnings, that's where your vision statement becomes very important. Usually in the endings process, there's 4 Ds that can happen. And you're going to talk about this in your first breakout. 1 D is called disengagement. And that usually means the question that you're exploring there is, where is my new place and who are my new colleagues? Another D is disidentification. Who am I now? Who am I now? Another possible D could be disenchantment. What things are really real? For example, think Santa Claus. Think the Tooth Fairy. Think your notions of fairness. Those are examples where you're going like, okay, what is really real now? Because you had this idea of something was real, and then something happens and now you're questioning what's really real. And then the last D is disorientation. Which way is up? Which way is back? Which way is forward? Which way is backwards? Which way is down? It's when you're disoriented. So oftentimes after a change and something ends, the human response is to basically go into one of those 4, sometimes more than one of those Ds. And it varies depending upon the change that you're going through. So a quick recap. Change is an event. It often is triggered by something external to you. Transition is a process, 3 phases: endings, neutral zone, new beginnings. And new beginnings is related to the concept of personal vision that we're going to talk about later. All right, so now you're going into your first breakout group. In the first breakout group, I want you to share, and someone put it in the chat, a change that you went through in the last 12 months. Remember, that's an event. And when you share that, and pick something that you feel comfortable sharing with the group, okay? The second question is, what ended as a result of that change? What did you lose? By the way, oftentimes when you lose something, you gain something. But we're just going to talk about the losing part right now. And the third question is, which of the 4 Ds did you connect with based on the change that you're just talking about? Which one of those Ds came up with you, showed up the most for you? Okay, let's hear some of your reactions about the distinction between change and transition. And if there are any questions that you have for me about those 2 concepts, change and transition, endings, neutral zone, new beginnings. I'll take any questions, and you can just raise your hand or you could just holler it out. First, how was it to talk about a change and then to talk about the Ds and which one you might gravitate towards?
I can go real quick. I guess just talking in general felt really nice. Just hearing that like a lot of people are having the same problems that like you are. So it's just like super nice to like have these conversations. You realize that you're not alone in this, and there's others who are like going through the same struggles that you are, and just like going through the Ds, just getting to talk about it and just talking about like how you're feeling and like the difference between like change and like it was change and what's the other one? I'm sorry.
Transition.
Transition, right? So like change is like the initial impact and like how you react to it, I guess, is like one aspect that we talked about. And also just like the transition, just like how we're getting used to like how we're getting used to like our new environments, just like trying to make the best of it. And you know, trying to like the bad things about it, just like putting in the back of your mind and just try to focus on like the good things that are happening because of that change.
Great. And this is related to the previous conversation that you were having about isolation. When you're in conversation with your colleagues and your peers, you realize that you're sharing some of the same challenges. And when you're in conversation with each other, you can really find support and actually get some ideas about how you can move through that particularly difficult change. What else came up for others? Thank you, Osvaldo. Go ahead.
So one thing that my group has like found in common is that we experienced like change in our relationship with people like during the last year, because like once things have been online, like when we go to classes, we can see people's faces or have like small talks as like naturally as before. Also, we kind of some of the friends we had argument where we are like not as close as before because like people are less engaged during this time. They're less likely to like be responsive, and it's harder to have like conversations or have good communications. So we had a lot of problems with that. But the good thing is like we kind of realize it's not like our own problem. It's like we all kind of share this kind of problem. So that is good to realize. And that's like also we kind of resonated that there's like a sense of disengagement with people.
Thank you. Alaya, and tell me if I mispronounced your name, okay?
Yes, it's Aaliyah. I was gonna let Adina go first because I've like taken space a few times already.
Okay, Adina.
Hello. I was just gonna say, I feel like switching to online, while it was a change that that definitely brought about like different things, you know, paying attention. I feel like it definitely brought about like a change in feeling like I wasn't, I like I'm a fourth year, so I was like, it made me feel like I hadn't been here for 4 years and like almost have a degree and like what I'm getting a degree in is like, oh wow, like I'm trying to learn this like new online stuff, and so it's like, wow, like makes me feel like I'm a beginner again, and like I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, and it's like, wow, like have I been here for 4 years? Have I been doing this, like writing these papers? Like I'm so on the computer all the time, like I'm exhausted. Like should I be this exhausted when I'm writing these research papers that I should be looking forward to writing, or that I know I'm supposed to be writing for, you know, like my major, or, you know, like just different things feeling more exhausting just because, you know, like there's different things that I'm having to learn or do as like a new learner that I guess I hadn't had to do in my degree before. And it's just like feeling that stability is just like taking more time with myself, I guess, is like the online. And like I was saying, like it makes it really convenient, you know, to be with family and be able to be back and forth between different places when you can watch recordings and stuff like that. But just that aspect of like not really having the groundedness and like I guess my major, just, you know, just the feeling of like, you know, like the imposter syndrome, like I don't feel the imposter syndrome about like the place anymore or being in the Berkeley, but it's like now I feel imposter syndrome about being my tech savvy Zoom. Like I'm on my, am I typing as fast? You know, like I can't tell these teachers, they can't see the look on my face and everybody's pencils writing and like us not putting our pencils down, you know, and like nobody's got their cameras on because no one wants to be worried about how the, you know, and it's just like, you don't want to be recorded. It's just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't get ready yet. You know, I just woke up. It's just like all those different things. So, but you learn a lot more about yourself. So, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much. There's a couple of things I want to pull out of there for all of you. The notion of stability is really a false notion. Things are going to be changing all the time. So I don't believe that the goal is to create a stable environment. I think the goal is to have a resilient environment and for you to have resilient skills, because things are going to be changing all the time and you're always going to be learning something. So the idea of, oh, I just want things to be the same, that's not realistic. That's not going to happen. So assume that things are going to be changing all the time. Some of the changes you will generate, but a lot of the changes are generated by things that are external to you. And the more you understand this idea of transition, how humans go through the transition process, you will be better prepared for changes that happen in your life. One of the important things to know about the neutral zone, that crazy chaotic zone, is that's the time to be creative. That's the time to take a step back and say, how can I creatively get myself through this process so that I can continue to move toward the vision that I have for myself? So when you have that initial chaotic feel, think creatively. Think chaos, creativity. Chaos, creativity. They work together. It's kind of a natural thing that you will figure out. I'll take one more question. Is it Okemah? And tell me if I mispronounce your name, okay?
Yes, it's Okemah.
Okemah, thank you.
Yes. I was just gonna say the entire prompt was, I'm sorry if my background's a little noisy, but the entire prompt was, it was nice. It felt like it flowed in our conversation. One of the things that came up in our breakout room was just, I guess, deciding on change and then acting on it and like intentionally transitioning. I talked about a transition I made as a senior to remain at Cal as an undergraduate. Another student talked about her decision to change majors. And while that could have felt scary, like it was like almost like a declaration for her to like make sure she was connecting with what she was passionate about and deciding not to move forward with what she wasn't, just because she had previously like publicly claimed like that's the direction that she wanted to move in. And I just thought that was really beautiful. I'm always excited when we all choose what's best for us. And so, yeah, I think the whole like identification and all of those things really flowed well in our conversation because it felt like each one of those were a step in that process for me as well. Graduate in spring, but I chose to graduate, really pursue research and just find what I want to do next in my next step of the journey. And that was like a very intentional choice. And it's also one that I'm incredibly pleased with and like super settled in now. So I just think that was really, really nice. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And the takeaway there for all of you is you can have a personal vision and your personal vision can change. It's not etched in concrete. And it's not a bad thing for you to make a decision that, oh, I had this major and I shifted to this major, or, oh, I thought I was going to graduate in 5 years and now I was going 4 years and now I'm graduating in 5 years. You get to, your creativity process and how you're thinking about yourself can change. You can make an adjustment to your personal vision. That is not a negative. That's not a bad thing. That's speaking truth to yourself. Okay, so now we're going to transition a little bit from the notion of change and transition. It's really important to remember that transition is a process, 3 phases. Something ends. Often there's a loss in there. There's a crazy neutral zone. That's where it's chaotic. You're a little bit disoriented. You don't know what to do. And then there's a new beginning, which is often your vision of what you see in the future. So a personal vision statement it's like a mission statement of what you want to accomplish in your life, both personally and professionally. So it is a mission statement for you that reflects what you want to establish personally and professionally. And now we're going to go into another breakout. You were asked to do an exercise in advance to pick your 5 top values and to tell your scholar colleagues why those values are important to you. So for example, one value for me is international work. And why that's important to me is, one, I'm a military son. So very early in my life, I lived outside of the United States. And so I learned the process of learning new cultures and seeing the difference between living in another country and living in the United States and how I benefited from that. So one of the things that I value now in my life is international work, because I learn a lot more about myself when I'm outside of the country as well as when I'm inside of the country. So you're going to go through, talk about your top 5 values, and for each value, tell your colleagues why that value is important to you. Then we're going to come back and we're going to have a conversation about how values are connected to your personal vision. Have a good chat. Okay, perfect. Welcome back. I'm curious to hear from some of you, don't be shy, about what it was like to, one, do the values clarification and to connect what's important to you with the values. Talk to me about that a bit.
I can share.
Go ahead.
I think one of the benefits of this activity, I feel like always, is because we all have our own experiences and backgrounds, and everyone comes to their own conclusions about what their values are. And we get so focused on that that we forget to kind of consider where other people come from and what kind of values they hold. So I really appreciated hearing everyone's explanations and like justifications for their values, because I realized like, oh, I hold like a lot of the same things and I just don't really recognize it or like outwardly express it. So I just think it's a good grounding exercise.
Thank you. That's really important, especially when you're working in a team environment, because actually, oftentimes we behave from a value. Our values guide our behavior. And when I work with leaders and teams, that's why I think it's important for you to share your values with your teammates, because then it gives them insight into why you're behaving and why you're responding in a certain way. So I really appreciate your comments. Who else? Anybody?
Okemah, you can go ahead.
Okay, I was waiting to see if anyone else wanted to say anything. I just wanted to say that practice is very similar to how I operate in general. One of the things, I have a daughter who's a freshman in high school and a son who is a seventh grader. And one of the things I often ask them is why? Like, why everything? Because I want them to think about why they're doing what they're doing, or why the things that are important to them are important. And I really want them to get in the habit of understanding the thought process of making a decision or making a choice and how they are connected to those things. And I want that for them because that's how I move. That's how I think. That's how I'm guided through life. And it has paid off so much because even with my daughter being a ninth grader, you know, I'm asking her why, and I'm also challenging her to ask her friends like why they're making decisions, or even people that are older than her, you know, why they're doing the things they're doing. Why did you get that tattoo? Why did you decide this? You know, what does that mean for you? Like, what is that actually indicating? And what's fascinating is she's already starting to understand, like, yeah, mom, a lot of people are making decisions and they don't know why. And I thought, yeah, it's pretty incredible, right? And it's probably because they weren't taught, and that's not, you know, anything negative toward them. But what I know is that this part is truly a gift when you can connect why you're doing what you're doing, or why this thing is important to you, or why you're invested in things. You know, it's just not moving through life blindly, but to understand why. So I really felt that because I do that often. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's take one more.
Hi, I could speak. I thought this was extremely important just because I've been feeling extremely isolated, and all of these activities so far have made me feel so connected to everyone, and especially with their values, because I get to see how my values align with others, and even values that I thought that I didn't hold, I can relate to and be like, oh yeah, I do share that value. And in our through our conversation, we went on a tangent about just how we were feeling, and it did relate to our values, but it's kind of like, how do you uphold those values when you feel like your environment is not conducive to you upholding that value of self-care and self-love, or, you know, health and safety and things of that nature. And it just allowed for so much introspection when just me being in this very first year at Cal in this totally new environment with this crazy course load, I'm not necessarily thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my classes and my workload and what I need to do, and, you know, all of that stuff. And I haven't been connected to my values as much because I'm more focused on the external world as opposed to the internal world.
Mm.
And also, it also we also like deviated to talking about mindfulness just a little bit, just because as we were talking about values, I started recognizing that, you know, I felt a little guilty, like, why am I focusing so much on myself when I have all these other things to do? Like, it's really it's kind of hard because I want to, you know, open up another tab and multitask and, you know, be productive while we're in this space where it's supposed to be solely about ourselves. And I'm still fighting this guilt because I feel like, you know, there's other priorities, but just me recognizing this guilt is showing me that I don't view my personal self as the top priority because I feel this guilt.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it's a lot of introspection, and I really appreciate this. And I'm going to close the tabs.
That is so important. What you're talking about is sometimes your values are in conflict with each other. And there's an incongruence that you're experiencing. And by the way, it doesn't have to last for a long time. Sometimes 4 years or 5 years seems like a long time, because you're a student, and a lot of times there are things that you have to do. But understand that once you graduate, you get to behave your life in the way that you want to behave it. Now, I still think self-care and paying attention to your personal needs is very important. And I just want to encourage you to take the time out to do that. We talked about that earlier in our first session. But yes, sometimes your values are incongruent with each other. Let me give you an example. International travel and international work was important to me, and my family was important to me, and I have an elderly mother. I had an elderly mother. She has passed away. And my international travel would take me away for almost a month and a half. And so I had this conflict of being away and enjoying my work, but also worrying about my mom, who was back in East Oakland. Now, this is when you're incongruent, and this is in the crazy neutral zone. This is where creativity comes into play. So one, I had to involve my other family members. I had to let them know I'm out of the country. I also had to tell myself I'm actually only 8 hours away. If something happens, I could be back home in 8 hours. So I had to just tell myself that. But I had to kind of organize a kind of support system for my mother when I was away. And that was kind of a temporary thing for me until I was back in the country, and then I could kind of go back. So there are moments that you're going to be in conflict, but you can creatively figure out how to address those things. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to keep going. But you guys are really all of you are getting this concept really well. So if you had a little bit of struggle coming up with your values, often your values are related to your strengths, the things that you have a lot of passion about. So if you found yourself struggling with, I can't pick from 10 to 5, you might want to lean toward the things that are your personal strengths and things that you have passion about. And it's okay for values to be in conflict with each other. Sometimes, for example, I have a value of a collaboration, and sometimes at school, I found the environment to be very competitive. And so I had a personal conflict with that. And I had to learn to deal with that. And it's not a bad thing to be in conflict. The most important thing is to be aware that there is some conflict that you're experiencing between your values. And the last thing I'll say about values is that values can change over time. Earlier in my life, my career was very important to me. So work was a higher value than family. Later in my life, family, community became more important to me. Now, sustainability is a value for me. So your values can evolve over time. That's why periodically it's good to do this values clarification. It also helps you with decisions that you have to make. So think about your values as a guidepost. And the vision is the destination that you're headed. So if you have your guideposts and you're on this road and you're at a crossroad, what should I do? Your values will help you stay on your path, and your vision will point to, this is where I'm headed. Okay, let's talk about crafting your personal vision statement. First thing, so you might be saying, well, how do I do that? How do I begin? First, be attentive to what's around you. Oftentimes, there's something that's coming up in your mind about, wow, I really like that. I really see myself doing that. That's how vision starts to happen. It could come in the form of an idea, an impression. It might be a daydream that recurs. It could be a comment that someone made to you. The head of the math department, I used to be a teacher, the head of the math department told me, you know, Deary, if you teach for more than 5 years, it's going to be very difficult for you to stop teaching. I didn't forget that. And then another colleague of mine said, you know, you have great analytical skills. Have you considered a role in the business world? I didn't forget that. So people are dropping little comments to you. All of those things can impact and help you shape the personal vision that you have. And there's often something deep in us that motivates us, something that we're longing for. Listen to that. Your personal mission also should incorporate your values. So here's where your values come in. Your mission should speak to and pull forth the things that you have passion about. Third, your mission statement should reflect your strengths. So if you haven't done a strengths exercise, I'll send some to Yo-Yo and she could pass to you, where you make a list of your strengths. And you want to make sure that the strengths that you have are capitalized. You can take advantage of those strengths in your mission statement. And then you want to write 2 to 3 sentences. And let me give you an example. This is mine. I coach and advise individuals striving to excel at their intersections of leadership, systemic change, and racial justice. My work is often with multicultural teams from countries around the world, including the United States, Switzerland, China, Canada, Belgium, Brazil, Italy, Nigeria, and South Africa. That's my personal vision. 2 sentences. And one thing you want to check when you're writing a personal vision, there's 3 criteria: concise, clear, and compelling. 3 C's: concise, clear, and compelling. Compelling means it's like a magnet. It pulls you toward it. It also pulls other people into it. Other people like, oh, I heard what you just did, and I'm interested in that. In addition to it pulling you forward, it also pulls other people toward you. It captures my strengths, in this case, coaching and advising. It talks about my interests, leadership, systemic change, racial justice. And it talks about who I want to work with, individuals and multicultural teams. So all of that was in my mission statement. So there was a who in there, there was a what in there, there was a what's important to me in there. 2 sentences. I wish I had more time to have you write them down and we could practice. But here I'm going to make an offer to you. Anybody that wants to share their personal mission statement with me online and get some feedback about it, you can write me on LinkedIn and I'll respond to your message. So, personal mission statement: clear, concise, 2 sentences, compelling. It should pull in your values, and it should also reflect your strengths, things that you're passionate about. And this is your touchstone. When the world is chaotic and you're in that neutral zone and the 4 Ds are kicking in and you're disoriented and your personal vision is what you touch, is what you look towards to help you stay on track. So let me stop and take a few more questions because my time, unfortunately, is almost out.
Thank you so much, Deary. There was one question from Sarah in the chat. How would you advise someone in this exercise who is in the disidentification phase? How could they approach visioning?
That's a good question. Disidentification for people is the question, who am I now? And that answer to that question might be, I don't know. I don't know who I am right now. So the personal vision might be to discover, who am I? That becomes the work. Who am I? What do I want to become? And just dream. Go inside. What are you passionate about? It starts from that type of work, passion, interests, and also know that it can change. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. Anything else before we close out?
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Thank you for the response, actually, because I feel like that really resonated with me and is a part of the self-discovery that I'm embarking on and have been going on the past couple weeks. I guess as someone who's more vision oriented, this is really great exercise for me, but what do you do after the vision?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I wish I had more time, but I don't. So write this down, everybody. D plus V plus F is greater than R. D plus V plus F is greater than R. D stands for dissatisfaction of where you are right now. V is your vision of the future. F is the first step that I can take right now that moves me in the direction of my vision. Has to be greater than resistance. That's my math teacher coming out. So discomfort and dissatisfaction plus your vision plus the first steps that I can take that move me toward the vision has to be greater than resistance. And know that the tendency when a change happens is to hold on to the past. That's the natural tendency, because that's what we know. But sometimes you don't have a choice to hold on to the past because the world is changing. So you always have to have a sense of where am I headed and what can I do to keep me moving in that direction. So you have to have a vision, but then you also have to have a plan. And the plan has to be in small incremental steps that keep moving you in that direction. All right, so I'm out of time. It was really great to spend an hour with you. I'm wishing you all well in your scholarly career. I'm expecting invitations to graduations as they happen throughout the next 4 or 5 years. And go Bears. Thanks.